Now, your baby won't let you put him or her down. So for this, I don't mean the basic need of wanting to be held. And if this is your experience about my baby won't let me put him down or her down, you probably know what I mean. This is a little more charged. So why this happens, this is usually, I find, a sign of needing to process some feelings or experiences, and it might be something like early separation. Um, might be right after birth or something later, or could be a big move or mom going back to work, something related to separation, not in every case, but often. I also find it can be related to womb history. So this is a bigger topic, but sometimes when there was a miscarriage or a certain concern, we see this here as well, kind of when there's more anxiety around separation. So reach out if that's resonates with you. That's kind of a bigger topic. So the thing to understand here also is that cries, this type of cry, so there's babies cry for basic needs. That's the part everyone knows. And then there's babies cry for stress release process. Okay, within this type of cry, I find there are two kind of main categories, ways to think about it. One is general crying. They will just cry, release whenever they need to. And then the other is situation specific, meaning that cry doesn't come out necessarily until that situation is triggered. So in the case of a separation experience, like maybe a NICU experience or whatever the separation was, some of that is going to be processed just in general crying. And then sometimes there are some deeper layers that won't come out until that situation is triggered. So in the case of sleep and bedtime, you go to put your child to bed, you go through that process, but sleep feels like a separation, or if you're leaving the room, that feels like separation. So that can trigger that old memory, felt sense. Still something in there to process. Okay, and then another scenario here within this one is sometimes when holding has been the go-to for to stop crying. So sometimes it's the pacifier or walking, shushing, bouncing. In some cases, I do see that just holding, whether it may be holding up on the shoulder, which is out of eye contact, or just sometimes families feel like holding has become, just realized I'm not sharing my screen, but I will. Holding has become the go-to for crying. That sometimes can get you stuck in this. That won't let you put them down. And I'm going to share my screen. Oops, we are not leaving the meeting. We are just sharing the screen. Okay, guys. Okay, if you have an obvious way for crying in arms to happen here, do that. So like if you are also using a pacifier or nursing for comfort and you're clear when it's hunger versus comfort, that kind of thing. If you already have something clear like that that gives you a way to get to the cry release, do that. If your baby falls asleep in your arms but wakes when you transfer, I have another tip here in this course about an actual handling tip for transferring. Try that and see if it's related to the logistics, so to speak, or just the mechanics of putting them down. If your baby falls asleep in arms, but then cries or becomes agitated when you put them down, you kind of get stuck in this cycle, pick them up, put them down, you might need to do some cry release beside them. So we talk about crying in arms. That's really important to try and start that way. There's some cases like this, like if there's a separation experience and the cry only gets triggered with the separation, that I work with this sometimes. So I don't recommend doing this in the crib. That's not what I mean. And if you get stuck with this, also reach out, because there are more ways we can work with this. But stay next to, so maybe if the sleeping area, or if you can get yourself comfortable on the floor or the bed, and you lie down next to them, you stay with them and allow the cry release that way. So you're still there, very present and very close. In some cases, the cry will come out that way, and you might feel at some point you probably want to pick them up in arms. But crying in arms, the in arms piece is important, but it's also really about crying in presence. So this is not to make like sleep training okay. That's not what I mean, like where you stay there but you move farther and farther away type of thing. It's not that. It's really, was there an early separation experience or a big move, or you went back to work, something like that that feels like it makes sense for you. And when does your baby cry? Do they cry if you're not holding them, like and you're beside them, or is it more complicated than that? So, okay. Hope that gives you some things to play with. Now, your baby or your toddler falls asleep fine, but you can't transfer them, or wakes every time you put them in their crib. Okay, this one, your child might literally be startling or tensing due to the pull of gravity when you set them down. So try the tip in this course for positioning when transferring. If you, just even yourself here, if you lean back a little bit, anywhere beyond straight up and down, like this midline, you start feeling the pull of gravity. So we can start tensing or bracing, or a sense of falling is triggered. Startle is triggered by a sense of falling, which happens in the head, neck. So all of that can happen very obviously, or it can be very minute, where you may not even notice it. So like that sense of falling or a little bit of startle. So if that's what's happening, or go to my tip and you can check out if that's what's happening. Otherwise, if you're finding they fall asleep fine, but you can't transfer, if you were able to get some cry release, it's possible that the cry may not be fully out yet or fully finished. So sometimes they will cry some and then they'll kind of stop. Once you get familiar with this, you'll be able to see the difference between when they stop and they're finished and really relaxed and hanging out and chill and serene, versus when they stop and it's still actually bubbling. So they might stop, but you might see the fingers go in the mouth, or they might do something that seems tense, or they might be watching you, or they might start crying again the instant you start moving. Some of those things, if your baby hasn't gotten the cry fully out yet, but they have fallen asleep, that can happen sometimes when they wake up when you try to transfer. Now, the crib itself, if you're transferring into the crib, there's always the question of a lot of babies legitimately don't like the crib. So that's also kind of a separate question. But just as far as the being able to transfer and put them down, you can check these things out. And then again here, sometimes a separation experience that's not processed yet will come into play here. So see my previous tip in this section for baby won't let you put him or her down. Okay. The yo-yo effect. Your baby falls asleep, you transfer, they wake up, repeat. Pick them up in arms, fall asleep, transfer, wake up, pick up, where you get stuck in this cycle. If this is you, you will know what I mean. See the other two tips here in this section. Baby won't let you put him or her down and falls asleep fine but can't transfer. See if there's something in there that gives you some clues. And again, like the others, this also can be related to a separation experience. Or it can also just be related to they're not used to doing the cry release process and they don't quite either have the hang of it, like what their feelings feel like to get out, even if you're trying to hold space for it, or they don't quite feel safe yet to have a full cry. In that case, stick with it and keep holding space. But that cycle, that yo-yoing does happen sometimes. So try these other things and reach out if you get stuck with this.